Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Comics Rant. My name is Arvin Bautista and I'm your host, and today we are going to talk about George Perez. George Perez was a very giant influence on my just artistic tastes, really. So I kind of came across his art a little differently than everybody. I grew up in the Philippines, and I was around 10, I think, when I started seeing his stuff at my cousin's house in the Philippines, with his drawings in Teen Titans. And that is actually what he's very well known for, and that's kind of what made a mark in the industry for everybody, really, and his career afterwards that followed. I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so the books I had access to would be from a local bookstore that were reprints, or like these secondhand magazine stores, like Book Sale and Bookazine. This was a long time ago. I think Book Sale's still around. I don't think Bookazine is in the Philippines. Anyway, so I would go over to my cousin's house and borrow his copies, and that guy, my cousin, is a super collector. So he was, I think the first time I ever saw like bags and boards for comic books was at his place. And, you know, I kind of learned my meticulousness with handling comic books through him. I'm actually not much of a collector anymore, or I never really was. I never really sold the stuff to make money and, you know, try to keep them all mint and have them graded. But I did learn, like, you know, how not to crease the spine, all that, yada, 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 and what is, like, what looks nice and what makes things mint or near mint, right? But I just really loved comic books for the artwork that was in it, and it is nice that I do have these proper handling techniques for comic books nowadays. Anyway, so that's where I saw his stuff, but I never was able to collect any of it because he was so popular back then that his books, I think, were even the current books at the time were already marked up by the time they got to the Philippines. So, you know, all these comic books have to get imported from the US, and those would get tax and all that kind of stuff, whatever. And exchange rate, the US dollar was powerful, so it cost me a lot of money to even get my hands on one of his books. So by the time I was able to buy them, by the time I was able to buy any of his books, I was in high school. Yes, so I was in Hong Kong by then. We moved to Hong Kong. And it was his issues of Wonder Woman that I really connected with. I have Crisis as well, which I read all the way. I borrowed all these. These were just awesome. It's epic. This cover with Alex Ross painting over his pencils is pretty freaking amazing. And you know, nowadays these are collected in like these really nice, nicely printed hardbound books. And I mean, this cover is nuts. I don't think I can even get the whole thing on camera here, but I know there was like this one. So I'm going to be jumping around here because I'm just going to be ranting. This is Comics Rant after all. So this collection I bought with one of my very first few paychecks. Where did I start working? At 6'2". Wow, is that where I spent it on? So I was still freelancing. Oh no, I think at Backbone. No, I think it was at 6'2". I spent freelance money on this, so that's how excited I was. So it came out. This was his only copy there. I think I kind of dinged it trying to get it out of the plastic wrap. So this book was all airtight plastic wrapped, and I used a razor, and I think I kind of scratched it here. You're probably not going to see it, but but I still know it's there. And you know, it's got like all these dings on the book. I think this was the last copy. I got it from the comic book store in the mission, a comic book store in the mission. It's not there anymore. It's like this legendary store run by this guy that was supporting underground comics for the longest time. I'm blanking on his name. I'm very sorry. This guy is like a legend and I can't remember his name. Super nice guy. So this is like the hardbound book, a hardbound version of this book, and this is the one I was reading from my cousin, and it was just amazing. So he was being inked here by Dick Giordano and Jerry Ordway and all sorts of people. I mean, Mike DiCarlo. So these guys were, I remember Mike DiCarlo's stuff on Dan Jurgens' Booster Gold, Jurgens. And I know I liked his stuff there, but you know, the amount of detail that he puts into his drawings is pretty staggering. I'm surprised he was able to bust out so many pages. But this is the Crisis that I remember, and this is the crossover, in my opinion, to end all crossovers. But I always loved how in Crisis they would use like these kind of like B-list, C-list characters and chuck like Superman in there. But you get to know all these characters, right? So Charlton Heroes were acquired by DC and so that's Blue Beetle. So he came in through that way. There's Legionnaires there, Green Lanterns, it's John Stewart, not Hal Jordan. Firestorm was getting hot and people would reminisce and say he was like a Marvel type character. He was this young kid with school problems and, nuclear powers. He still is a very cool character. I'm not sure why they haven't utilized him as much as they could. But those powers are kind of crazy anyway. He could pretty much change things into whatever else he wanted. He could rearrange molecules. Which is kind of a nutty power, and he can make things explode. Anyway, like I remember a lot of the things that I did. His take on the Kirby Crackle, energy explosions, all that kind of stuff. I just swiped. Faces, I would swipe faces from him, and when I was a kid, I'd draw like this. Looks like a Jerry Ordway ink drawing here. I could be wrong. But Jerry Ordway is also another favorite of mine. I will talk about him in another episode. But I always liked Crisis. It was just so epic. People were dying. Like the Flash died, Supergirl died. Sorry about the spoilers, but they did, and it was permanent for a while. It was a story to kind of clean up the continuity of DC. And like you can see here, there's 2 Supermen. There's actually 3 in the story. 4, I guess you could say. One is the evil Superman that dies in the first few pages. Anyway, this story is just so epic, and George Perez is the only one who could do it. Who could draw everybody like this, right? At the same time. Look, every page is nuts. Every character is fighting some other villain, and this is a cosmically epic story, and I loved it as a kid. So this was my first entryway into him, really, right? I saw the Teen Titans stuff. It was awesome, but I was never that frequent enough to catch up to every issue that my cousin would buy. I did read the Trigon stuff, which was awesome. And here's a cover that I will re-ink, and you'll see it later, as my tribute to him. I remember this face, this panel. I don't know why. It was awesome. Everybody's in shock, and I think these characters are from, Captain Comet, I think, is from another company that got acquired too, I think. Anyway, so again, these are like C-list characters at the time, right? Animal Man before Grant Morrison got his hands on him. Adam Strange, Rip Hunter, right? The nuclear, Atomic Knight, all that stuff. Dolphin, all this stuff was just amazing stuff. Brainiac, that classic Brainiac look. I'm pretty sure I swiped this into one of my drawings in the comic book that I used all these Marvel and DC characters. Anyway, Crisis, awesome. and this was the first time I saw his stuff. I mean, look at this inking by Jerry Ordway on his stuff. It just looks great. I always like their pairing. I don't know if he was Perez's favorite. It's not like he really hated people for inking his stuff, but he has his preferences. Anyway, Wonder Woman dies. Basically reverted into mud, back into clay, right? Old Superman goes away, goes into a pocket dimension. He doesn't die, but old Superman and Superboy, they're versions of this guy Superman that exist, right? Aside from ours. And technically, this is the guy that married Lois Lane back then. And so that this is almost like the Silver Age version of him. Almost. Like the guy he's the guy who threw the green car in Action Comics. You could say it that way. And then when they switch over to the 80s, when John Byrne took over mid 80s, that's the Superman that I really grew up reading. Anyway, that's Crisis. I can't believe I'm just putting this away, but George Perez is the man. He touched so many great properties. Everything. The Avengers and Marvel. I mean, he touched everything. But this is like the epicest of all epicest crossovers. Let's put that aside. That was awesome. That was definitely where I first saw his stuff and remembered it. But Wonder Woman run is so special to me because it is when I was able to use my own money and buy George Perez Wonder Woman issues. And I was there at the beginning, so I was able to buy the first issue of his run in the 80s. I had moved to Hong Kong at this point, so I was getting more allowance. I could actually do side jobs around the house, like cleaning windows, and my mom would pay me more. Before I get to that, this is I go back to it. This is the 2 issues that are collected that have the Silver Age guy. His run ends here, and it's sad. I guess he just kind of stops working, stops getting jobs. It's a freelance thing, so DC just stopped hiring him after this because Byrne and George Perez came over. And I remember as a kid, Kurt Swan's stuff was a little not as exciting to me, but now I love it because it is like the bread and butter Superman to me. Like that, this is Superman, the quintessential Kurt Swan. Superman is what I see with this pose, flying in the classic, one fist up and one fist down, leg up. Like Christopher Reeve was probably looking at that stuff when he was doing the movie, or at least any kind of Superman comic book artwork that he must have seen must have had Kurt Swan in there because he was just that prominent. He worked on Superman for like 20 plus years. Like easily, I think. And so it's kind of heartbreaking that he never really, the style had changed at that point. Like kids were gravitated more to George Perez's stuff or John Byrne's stuff. But I love that George Perez is paired with Kurt Swan here. So it really is the past and the future of Superman at that point in these 2 books. And this is totally like written by Alan Moore. This is one of the best Superman stories, in my opinion. Where it kind of ties up everything that happened in the Silver Age and then ends it. It's an actual ended Superman story that's ended, which is also epic because people are also dying in this book. His heroes or his villains are getting killed. Luthor's brain is getting taken over. This is awesome, by the way, guys. If you ever get a chance to get your hands on this or read it digitally, please do. It's awesome. I'm pretty sure like the Justice League animated show where this does happen, where Brainiac does take over Lex Luthor, and they kind of team up as one of the plot lines, is from here. He meets up with the Legion of Superheroes, which is a group of teens he inspires in the future. Batman's trying to pound his way, but he has to go one-on-one against Luthor Brainiac. Crypto dies? What the heck, dude? Crypto dies? This is some serious stuff. But yes, Kurt Swan and George Perez. So again, this is like a major milestone comic for me. This book, I never got to read until I was in college, to be honest, right? Like, but it is such an awesome story. I'm sorry I missed out on it. I don't think I would have been ready for it because everybody's dying in this comic. I would have understood it back when I was growing up. Anyway, let's put this aside and then let's get to Wonder Woman. So this, I remember I think I had the whole run except for maybe a couple issues. So I was going to these, what kind of store would it be? Like the British version of 7-Eleven, a little better than 7-Eleven. It's called Manning's. And, they would sell like some cosmetic stuff, and there was some canned food and magazine racks. Clothes, I think, were there. All that kind of stuff. Okay, maybe not 7-Eleven. Something a little nicer. Anyway, so the books I was getting were from a Toys R Us. The first Wonder Woman book, I think, was from a Toys R Us in this collected pack. I think I had like the second or third issue as a single, and then I was trying to look for the first issue. I'm just taking off this wraparound cover. Wait, I'm not looking at this. I'm looking at the hardbound cover right here. Okay, here, let's put that aside. And so this is the War of the Gods. Okay, let me go up here a little bit. My audio might cut out. I don't want to kill it. But Wonder Woman's right in the middle there, which is awesome. And he rebooted Wonder Woman after Crisis. So I just showed you those pages where she got reverted back into her clay form. And that gave them a chance to kind of bring her back up again. So I don't know, to me, I feel like he really touched on the Greek gods, and really did them well. They're very classically portrayed here, rather than in the New 52 where they're more modern, which is also a good take by Brian Azzarello. But this is the Wonder Woman for me. Like, yeah, there are many good runs and many cool takes on it, but this is the one that defines her for me. And it is an amazing accomplishment. I always saw George Perez's stuff. Other people wrote for him. So this one, he actually had more. I think in Titans, he also did some stuff, and Marv Wolfman helped script stuff for him. But this one was his thing, basically. So he has Greg Potter scripting for him, and he plots some of the stuff. And later on, he plots a lot of things, and then other people script for him too. But the main story is basically his. And I think Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot also mentioned that this run actually does have influence on their stuff, on the movie. But even how it opens with like a caveman who lost his hand, and a spiteful male that kills his wife. He snaps, he freaks out, sure, whatever, but you killed your wife, dude. That's not cool. And then her soul flies up into the heavens, basically, into Gaia. You'll find out later. But look at this stuff. This stuff is nuts. Right? Like, as a kid, I hated drawing backgrounds. And, George Perez is drawing tons of background in one building. And, it's depicted where there's, like, no gravity. So, they can walk sideways and stuff like that. You have Artemis and all these goddesses, basically making a race of Amazons to kind of save these women, and to basically be another voice, really, in the world of man, right? Because this Ares here, who is just basically the bad guy. He's the god of war. What is he going to do? The rebirth, they come back to life and then you got Hercules showing up here. Heracles, I guess, is his name in Greek, but we know him as, he is Hercules. Like, that's some crazy stuff, man. Ares, this battle armor was so cool to me as a kid. It still is. I mean, every page is just amazing. And I really do like, maybe because I grew up with it, but I do like Bruce Patterson's inks on him. And he's pretty solidly there the whole time. This is crazy stuff. This whole sequence is also kind of retold in Grant Morrison's Wonder Woman with Yannick Paquette. I also recommend that. That has a good take on Wonder Woman as well. But my teenage brain or preteen brain was blown away reading this stuff and the new spin on it, like a gun in Paradise Island. Like, I don't think that was something I connected to Wonder Woman back then. Like, what's a gun doing there, right? And then she sets off, puts on her costume, which is armor, really, like this garb. And it's also explained why she would be wearing this, because it was from somebody that had gotten to Paradise Island when she was younger, from the US, before Steve Trevor. It was, I think, Steve Trevor's mom or something like that. That's why they're connected. Even the connection of her with Steve Trevor has been redefined. He's not quite the love interest. Actually, he's not the love interest. But it's more like this, I wouldn't say father figure either, but just like there is a connection between them still. So that still exists. So that was totally different too. I'm just flipping through these pages. Deimos and Phobos, right? Ares. I think this was the first issue I got. So this is issue 3. And then I tried to look for the other issues, hunting for them. The Toys R Us stuff was like this grab bag where you could see, I think, 1 or 2 of the comics, but then one more was shoved in the middle and you had no idea what it could be. It could be something terrible. I remember this talisman was cool when she touched it. Like, she got all these instant memories into her head. So that was a cool device. Just really good. He just draws Wonder Woman so great. Like, this is the image of Wonder Woman in my head always. Great action sequences, great monsters. Look at her hair. He drew every hair on her head, and I loved it. Ate it up. But I always loved how, at this point, he's able to, I think Rob Liefeld was saying, there's like an interview with George Perez, and Perez was saying how he just drew everything. So when he was younger, he hadn't figured out how to distinguish from detail and clutter, right? So, but I think at the point when he's in Wonder Woman, he knows when to pull back and when to hit it hard, right? And someone else is inking him, of course, so they can't, this is pretty good detail to be captured, but it's not the same as when Perez is inking himself, which I always loved. But even here, right? Like, he leaves, there's a lot of detail, but there's like a lot of air around it so that these characters can still pop out. Anyway, this stuff is just awesome. Sorry, I'm nerding out here. But yeah, so he also had, there's this very big story about the gods taking over basically the world, wanting to take over the world, manipulating the US and Russia. So there's all this stuff going on with some end of the Cold War stuff, Cold War-y things. I think this is the issue I did not have, which is like the last issue of when she fights Ares. Isn't that just always the case? Yeah, so see, like, and he just seemed to love drawing everything, right? Like, there was no, he wasn't scrimping on anything. And I would be scrimping on everything. Everything would be like black. You couldn't see anything. And I just loved it. I just was absorbed into this world that he would draw, and anything that he would draw, and that's why I really enjoyed it. He also did, I remember this, so he would do this thing. So, okay, this was the 12th issue. So is that a year after working on Wonder Woman? Oh, it's not going to tell me what issue it is. It might be, or 10th issue or something like that. This cover is awesome. That he would do, or they would do, I wonder if he wrote the script for this. Len Wein and George Perez. Okay, so both of them scripted this. I always loved writer-artist, a person that can write and do the artwork in a comic book. That was how I loved it. I loved that kind of stuff, and I always wanted to do it myself. George Perez was one of those people. I mean, he still had other people helping him script. I don't think it's easy to do it. Alan Davis, I think, was one of them, and John Byrne, and I think even Neil Adams. I could be wrong. That might be later. So it would be like a diary entry, or like a news report, or, you know, this kind of thing mixed in with comics. And, you know, I hated reading books, like regular books. So this was, I remember reading this and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta read through all this words. But, you know, fortunately, George Perez was there to give me some really awesome pictures. And I like that it's broken up into this, and then it's like a diary entry. Even though I had, you know, I'd never read prose so much, I did love how a lot of this kind of experimental thing was going on in this issue. I remember. So comics in Hong Kong were in like these better quickie marts, right? And they would have like these price tags on them because, you know, it's not the same as US prices. And I remember developing a skill on picking off these little sticker price tags thing so that my comic could be near mint. Actually, it was never mint or near mint anymore after you have that stuff on there. Okay, so this is Cheetah. Yeah, Cheetah here was awesome. This was like that blood sacrifice style Cheetah, and it was a pretty awesome take on her. War of the Gods, I think, was when, so all this stuff that was happening was awesome, and then he starts up this other story arc called War of the Gods, where it's basically Clash of the Titans with Wonder Woman, and it's super fantastic. She gets tested, basically, right? Because the gods don't trust her. They don't like that she kind of went not against, but what the gods had wished, right? And so all this stuff is great. She gets this awesome armor. This is the other Wonder Woman. And this is where the armor she's wearing is from, and the gun, where the gun is coming from. Yeah, so that's where you find out that this lady is Steve Trevor's mom. Dun dun dun! Spoilers. Another story arc that I really loved, and it's like, how, you know, this series cannot do wrong. Like, yes, a slam bang awesome fight with Ares, right, to start it off, and then you get the War of the Gods, which is straight up Clash of the Titans awesomeness. She gets to resolve her issues with Hercules. So my young mind was blown away by this book because Hercules raped her mom. And, you know, I'm like young, so I'm like, rape in a comic book? What the? You know, they don't depict it, but that is what happens, right? She gets soiled. You know, you understand what just happened, and it's crazy, and it justifies why the Amazons kick their butts so hard. And then with all that, you're like, yes, Hercules is a bad man, which is already a twist on Hercules being this great hero from all the movies that I watched growing up. All of a sudden you realize, oh, he's a bad man. He's carrying Themyscira on his back, basically, right? I think that's what I remember. So he's bearing the weight of his sins, the Amazons, basically, on his shoulders. And he's under there in the pits where all these Wonder Woman's challenges are going on. And I forget why, but her mom is down there with Hercules. And the crazy part is, with all the stuff that happened, Wonder Woman forgives him, even when he cannot forgive himself, right? So also mind-blowing to me, right? And this is like the core Wonder Woman character. Forgiveness, love, all this stuff. Strength, still willing to fight for what is right, right? Mind-blowing for my teenage boy brain. That was just, going all hormones, testosterone at that time. Like, women were depicted, yes, I guess they are wearing bathing suits, but they were much stronger than what I was used to. So I think this is still in the 80s. But I think Todd McFarlane and those guys are already around, and Jim Lee, and comics were back then very male oriented, so it's always about the male gaze. Yeah. But Wonder Woman was just so cool to me. I'm still young, so I'm thinking at that point, I was still like, oh, girls are yicky and boys are strong, and their action heroes, they're always saving the princess and blah blah. And then here comes Wonder Woman, shoots all that stuff out of the water for me, and just, I guess, opens my brain a little better. Still a little closed, maybe. I don't know. And then after all that, an issue is devoted into it becomes like this murder mystery kind of thing. I mean, there's like a detective. We're not even following Wonder Woman. We're following this like gumshoe dude, cop, detective dude, trying to figure out who killed basically Wonder Woman's publicist. So when she first comes here, a PR lady hooks up with her. I don't think she really wanted to do it, and Mindy Mayer is more worldly, right, compared to Diana. But I remember I liked this issue. It wasn't, let me see if it was, I think it was Perez doing layouts, but, here. Written and illustrated, okay. I thought Bob McLeod inks him, so it looks different. It looks very different. So, Perez wrote this one too. What do you know? And this was like an awesome issue. It wasn't straight up superheroes. Wonder Woman's still blocking bullets, but basically by the end, I think it ends up that nobody killed her. She did get into trouble, but she kind of OD'd. So they're heavy stuff like drugs. What the heck? I'm just a kid. Really good stuff. And I think I've gushed on long enough. And then they also collect the annual here. And I had this issue. So I had all these issues in the Philippines. I kind of left them all there at my mom's house, my mom and dad's house. And they've been dying, really. It's very humid there, very hot. Comics don't survive. Yeah, I really do need bags and boards for everything. But this was one of the issues that I owned. A lot of my issues had gotten picked through by my cousin, because the same one that I would borrow his comics from, take a look at, because my mom was trying to get rid of some of them. It was just kind of taking up space. So he picked through some of the best issues that I had, but he did leave some of my favorite ones in my collection. Not Wonder Woman stuff, but I will talk about it in a different episode. Arthur Adams is drawing stuff in this annual, which was cool. Arthur Adams is mainly a Marvel artist. I think he did maybe a couple things for DC, but he was always Marvel. John Bolton also drew some stuff, which I think he is a Marvel guy mostly too. British artist, but he has this, I remember him in classic X-Men. So, which I think were like reprints, but then he would have like 5 pages of new short stories there that he would draw, and he had this creepy, horror realistic quality about his artwork, I would say. He might not say that. And then Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who took over Perez and Teen Titans, and this guy is a great too. If you don't know, he's the dude that draws basically the idea of DC that is probably in your head because he did the stock art, the art guide for when people franchised the DC characters. So like they would show up in like notebooks, T-shirts. I think some of the concept character designs on the second season of Super Friends are his. Alex Toth, I think, was on the first or earlier seasons. Anyway, his stuff is also fantastic. Kurt Swan shows up here again. Ink by Bob McLeod, same guy that did Perez in the later issues. Ross Andrew, the dude that did the Superman Spider-Man crossover, among other things, Metalman and and Spider-Man in general. Brian Bolland, the guy who drew Killing Joke, and Perez himself, inking himself, as she's spreading the ashes of Mindy Mayer. And this stuff is good stuff, good human, very grounded approach. That doesn't have to be gritty because it's Wonder Woman. But very realistic. And then I think these last few issues are inked by, I don't think I've ever seen this guy's stuff on the series before, but the very last Perez issue, I had this. Again, probably my cousin took it. It was a different looking print. It's a little, I guess it's cleaner. I think it must have been thicker lined. Then I remember the reds printed different. I think it was like a really bright, crazy red. But he was still writing it for the most part, right? And doing layouts, and then somebody else would finish it. That's great. That's a great face too. Whoever inked him got it just right on that one. And then the compilation has, all these Perez drawings, which are, again, just magnificent. This has like a little Linda Carter in there. Crazy stuff. I mean, look at this stuff. But yes, anyway, George Perez is the man. Rest in peace. He's one of the greatest. Amazing body of work. He has a lot of Avengers stuff in the Marvel side, and he did some Justice League, early Justice League, and I think the story is when he was just kind of thrown onto Teen Titans, and he thought that it would be canceled after 5 issues. So he was ready to move on, but that is definitely, Teen Titans is definitely his legacy, along with Marv Wolfman. I mean, the cartoon my kids watch. I do too. It's hilarious. And I watched the earlier version of that. I loved it too. And those characters, they were just sidekicks. And DC needed an answer for X-Men, and that's what they came up with. What a great answer. The fans just got the best of everything. So these are my prized possessions of the George Perez variety. Wonder Woman and Crisis, definitely the ones that I cannot do without. Anyway, hope you enjoyed me ranting. I got a little spittle on my comics. It happens. I will see you guys in the next segment. I think I went on a little long, but I think it was worth it. See you guys in the next half, where I do my little homage to George Perez. See you guys later. Okay, so for the drawing portion of this episode, I have to start off. I have to start off telling you guys that I totally messed up, and I think I deleted the time lapse for the file of when I was inking over this cover. Which is a shame, but at the same time, it's only recent that social media would
encourage you to post up all these reels and how to draw. This might work out okay. I might be able to give you guys better thoughts on how I approach this whole thing. I'm just doing a screen capture of my iPad where I did the inking, and I can probably talk you through it, through the layers and so on. And yeah, sure, you won't see a time lapse of me drawing, but it's probably not a big deal. You're probably going to learn a little bit better, or I would learn a little bit better if I heard somebody talking through their process than looking at like how awesome they lay down their lines, right? Like you kind of have to go down there and draw it yourself to really learn how to lay down these lines. Okay, so this was the cover I was talking about earlier, and I had all these other covers that I wanted to do. One of them was the Wonder Woman one, his last issue on that run with like this big green monster and holding like a ship and so on. But really, it's this cover that really blew my mind as a kid. And you know, you have 3 Supermen here. The old one, he's got like the little creases on his cuffs, and you get the regular Superman. This guy, he's not even looking at us. And I think that's what I kind of like about Crisis, is a lot of the spotlight goes to the characters that are not as prominent, right? And then there's Superboy over here, tiny. And it was kind of cool for me to see, you know, Superman is my favorite character, and now there's like 3 of them. And modern audiences can probably relate to this with Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man does the same thing into Spider-Verse. There's a multiverse full of these characters. But I did like how, because there are few like clone type characters of Superman, who is the first superhero, you can kind of say like Shazam kind of fits in there. Captain Marvel is his real name, but due to like licensing, he lost his name, got sued by DC and all this kind of stuff from back in the day. Anyway, he's kind of like Superman, and then you get Ultraman, who was like the evil Superman. So it's not just like Superman in a different costume. It really is a slightly different version of him as well in this series. Anyway, so this cover, I mean, you can see it's just insane. You got like energy blasts, you got superheroes bouncing off of the bad guy. This guy's the Anti-Monitor in his new armor, and I always love this noseless, all mouth kind of thing, and his headgear is kind of like this juggernauty kind of yikes, juggernaut like helmet, right? He's like the big bad of the DC universe, and he's come to really take all the energy from all the universes dying. He's pretty mean. You got Captain Atom. This is from like Charlton Comics when DC acquired it. This was his classic costume. He's changed and he gets rebooted and he's awesome. And nowadays, Crisis is, they have a Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths right now, which is their own crossover. I have read a lot of Crises, and they're always entertaining, but, you know, I'm not in a rush to go out there and buy it anymore like I used to, because this was the ultimate one for me. I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum. Go and buy Dark Crisis if you want to. This was the one that gave me my memories, very good memories of the DC universe. And always, it kind of made that universe, it made me a lifelong fan of DC for sure, but it made this multiverse stuff where everybody crosses over and, you know, there's other planets, this really, other universes, sorry, this really made me distinctly love this universe, this DC universe, which everybody is jumping in now, right? Even Michelle Yeoh is in the multiverse, which is awesome. But you know, you got every character in here. George Perez just drew everything, literally. So I wanted, you know, this is very daunting. I mean, you look at it, it's very daunting. I don't even know how I drew this thing, much less ink it, right? So now I'm looking at it, it's like, do I really want to ink this as a tribute to him? But I remember thinking about it. I was like, this is the issue. This is the one. This is the one that I can hold in my hands and go, this is what made me a fan of DC, of George Perez, of all this stuff. Even though I've seen his stuff before, I've been reading DC before, this is the one that I can point to. So I knew I had to do it for Mr. Perez. I would like to think that he got to see it before he passed away. I passed it through um, the people that were in contact with him, and and they reposted it. So I'm hoping that George Perez saw it. I don't really care if anybody else saw it. I just cared that he would see it. And So that it would be my way of saying thank you. I'm listening to some podcasts now, and they're talking about Rob Liefeld is talking about his memories of George Perez. This was before he had passed. It's an older podcast, but it's a great podcast just with his experiences in the comic book industry. But he was like a giant George Perez fan, so he has a ton of stories and memories about that. Anyway, okay, so let me get through how I did this. This was what I started with. I just did a screen capture, or just downloaded someone's screen capture of Crisis. Oh, actually, no, I went to the DC Comics app and did a screen capture of what they had, and you notice that it's kind of cut funny. I'm not really sure why, but this is a 50, right? I don't know why it's cut like that. Anyway, I wasn't thinking much of it. I was like, I'm just gonna. I actually didn't want to ink this because it was just scary to ink. So I was like, oh, let me just download this image, and I'll start tracing over it, right? Just to see what happens, right? I wasn't even thinking of like presenting it. It was just George Perez has cancer, and I just wanted to kind of like connect with what artwork that touched me the most that he did, and it just kind of grew from there. So anyway, I wasn't thinking, why did I take the screen capture, which is terrible? Like, see the number here? It's too close. It's too close to the edge. It's all wrong. Anyway, this is what I started with. And let's see, what do I have here? I'll just jump straight to the inks. So I would ink over his artwork. Let me bring down the opacity for this. You can see how I'm doing here. And what choices I was doing. So I remember just starting, I believe, with Superman, of course. I started with Superman. Here, I'll turn it on and off. It might be a little annoying. It might be easier to see what it really was, and then how I did it. Oop. So I ink pretty differently now than I used to. And I would even venture to say that Mr. Perez probably would not really like me inking him because I use this brush that's a lot grainier, and I know just from what Rob Liefeld was saying that George Perez really liked to go for this crisp line. He loved like Terry Austin on Burn, and he kind of liked that crispness, so he was always trying to do that. Even though he had a lot of detail, it was very clean. My inking is not clean, right? I kind of like this grit, and it's this brush called Ink Bleed in Procreate. I just use the staple stuff. Other people generate their own brushes, and other people... Ooh, I just kind of messed that up. Let me get rid of that. Sorry, it's bugging me. That line is there. What am I doing? I'm messing up this drawing. Okay, so let me... Oh my goodness. Technical difficulties. Yes, let me delete this. Or let me erase it. Okay. Anyway, this is that brush. Let's make another layer here for us. This is this ink bleed brush, and I find that I like it the best when it's kind of large, and unwieldy, right? I mean, it's nice in this detailed look, which is definitely what I do with this inking. But it kind of has this quality that you can control, right? I don't think I like it when it gets too fuzzy like this, right? I kind of like this sharpness, and all that is adjustable. Or even when it's smaller, it has this, yeah. Oh, that's too weak. Like that, right? And then you can kind of color it in. It kind of fills it in, not so great. Wait a minute. Maybe it's not ink bleed. I think it is ink bleed though. It looks a little different. See? Oh, maybe not. Okay, I'm just on crack. Let's leave that. All right. Let's leave this layer here just in case I mess everything up. So anyway, the way that I'm inking him is a little bit more gritty. It's a little bit more how I ink. And so I started with, that cropped off thing. So my inks are also cropped off, which was dumb. So I think I may have transferred, this file maybe got too big, and I transferred it to another file where all the history got, deleted. I didn't have the drawing history anymore. And that's why I can't show you a time lapse of how I'm inking this. But generally, I would just do the outlines around the character, right? Around, oops, here, let's move this up here so you can see. I would ink around this character. Hello, why are you still black? Oh, of course. I'm not inking with green ink, by the way. But I'd ink this. I remember I was very meticulous about it too. I just didn't want to mess up my inking. But as I get older, I used to be very just tight on detail. And good thing there's this digital nowadays, because I remember my hand would cramp because I'd press so hard onto the paper. Okay, so here's a little sample here. That's how I'd do my inking. I'd outline everything first, and then I would start shading it in. And I remember wanting to, and you'll see here, I remember I really wanted there to be light sources going on. It's just the way I ink. So everything's going to get darker, which is not the intent of, or at least I don't think so, which is not the intent of Mr. Perez's original artwork, right? This is supposed to be colorful. Like even the buildings are just line work. They're almost like speed lines, pointing, right? It's like it's action lines, except it's buildings. It's just really detailed buildings. He lets all this stuff, I'm zooming in here like crazy, but he lets this stuff breathe. So the characters are spaced nicely, and you see their silhouettes, right? They overlap every now and then, but it's very controlled. Like even Firestorm's hand here behind Firebrand. I think this character's Firebrand. Her back, right? There's like an energy around his hand, so his hand is a clean silhouette with all the lines of her feathers, right? It's just very nuanced, right? Wonder Woman, Superboy, they're not touching each other. These silhouettes are super clean, right? He does have some, even these guys hanging off of Anti-Monitor's hand, right? Maybe Flash and Robin cross over with their feet, but it's very minor, and the colors stand out on this gray hand character. Even the elongated man, his body, right? Like the stripes here, they're not overlapping too much, just enough to be like super detailed. So I really appreciated that. I think even as a kid, I really liked it because I could see my heroes clearly, but there's a ton of them on the page. So at this point, he definitely knows what he's doing, right? And I love like Shazam, Captain Marvel trying to pull out Aquaman from this finger, right? And it's like, oh, it's old Wonder Woman. It's not Oh yeah, there's like multiple Wonder Woman. So old Wonder Woman, you got young Wonder Woman who's tucked away on the side because, like I said, it's kind of cool to give presence to these characters that we don't normally see. I think there's Donna Troy is like you could say a version of Wonder Woman. It's her sister. But then Fury, I think, is somewhat like an analog to it, right? Fury is like this other Wonder Woman that's the daughter, the actual daughter of Wonder Woman, I believe, in Earth 2. Okay, I'm nerding out. I should talk about my process here. Okay, so what I was going for was light sources. So you have a ton of blasts here, like energy blasts, right? You got 4 right here. So that was a little tricky, but super fun. So there are blasts here. I know I just wanted to. So you can see like the energy blast that I chose to do here, like on here on this side. Okay, I'm gonna start drawing on this. On the side here. Oops. So you guys can see a little better. The energy blasts. Like here. Not big enough. Here and here. I kind of had to manage these a little bit. Right, so a good cheat for me were these guys. Because I knew I wanted to use this light source. These guys. Excuse me, it's breakfast. So these light sources, I cheated so I can use them to make shadows here. See these? Right, so it's kind of like this. My idea is like light is radiating from this character. So now, technically, this is all shadow. Right? Or in my head, right? I'm not blacking it all out like this. This would be terrible. But that's the idea, right? The lightest source is basically this one in the middle. But I do have to bring contrast to it everywhere, right? So even his face is very dark. So I'm doing cheats here. Lighting doesn't really behave correctly. I mean, if some 3D artist was going to come in here and try to light this in the 3D scene, they'd be like, this is all wrong. But that's the beauty of inking. I'm trying to make things pop out and have contrast, right? And it doesn't have to necessarily make sense in a realistic way. I kind of noticed this with some of the artists that I love. But you're trying to fake it so it does look like it's realistic. Okay, so here's another cheat, right? So I said like this is all dark, right? This is what I wanted to do. This is all dark. Like this. But I'm leaving this light. See these set of buildings over here? I'm leaving all of these light. Because I want to bring the darks back into the anti-monitor. Right? And then I got light again on this rim, on where I want it to land, really. Right? It's all light here. Contrast. I'm just playing with your eye. This is, I guess you could say, this is all in shadow. So this shadow, this one is especially for Hawkman. I remember I had to think about this. Sometimes when you're inking, you don't want to mess it up. And good thing for digital, you can kind of undo. But you don't want to mess it up, quote unquote, right? You don't want to add too much dark that now it's all black. Unless you're Mike Mignola, and then it looks awesome. So his main body, Hawkman's main body, is really a lighter, or there's more spaces of white, right? Like in his body. So now you can kind of like, these are all the white ones. I'm coloring it in. So now there's more white on his body, and it looks more defined. It looks like it's going to pop out a little bit more because it's the lighter point. And then his wings, perfect. George Perez does this too on his drawing, is basically all dark. So now, sometimes when I'm inking this stuff, I'll ink the foreground things first. And then you can kind of figure out like, okay, so his wings are dark, right? I'm going to need some kind of light like right here, the edge of his wing, to remain there, so that it holds his figure in, it holds the wing in, it holds the silhouette in. But now that means I'm gonna have to make this stuff dark right here, and it's gonna get tricky because elongated man is right there, and he's a character, and generally I want these characters to be lighter than the background, so they pop out. Right? It gets tricky. It becomes a puzzle. It becomes a very fun puzzle if you're into that stuff. So okay, let's get rid of this. It looks like the Joker got on my drawing. Sorry, I've been playing a lot of Arkham Knight. Okay, so let's take this segment right here. This is exactly what I did too. So now, because the background's going to be generally black, darker, right? But I'm inking George Perez. I don't want to just black it out, right? So I have to work with his detail. I will black out certain things, right? Oh, see. So the original inks here, I have reversed, basically. So that my idea was to make the background black so the characters can stay light. I think even the way I'm inking Firestorm here, right? But I'm leaving more of the grit to show. So that's like my way of bringing in gray, right? The lines are spaced apart more than this, right? That's just darker. That's a darker black. And in general, this whole background is just dark, right? Oh, my dog is sleeping. It just woke up. It's okay, buddy. It's okay, bud. And I will make his first podcast appearance, or first YouTube video appearance. I will make this line darker. So this is at the end. So I drew all this, right, and then I started laying down shadows and trying to get contrast and so on. And at the very end, I'll go back in there and thicken up some of these lines like this, right? Like that. And obviously, the higher the contrast, the more something will pop out. And this is what you get with the anti-monitor here. So, okay, so here's the original. Let me go through this one too. So there's a thick line here, you can see. It's happening here too in Mr. Perez's drawing here. And, you know, his hand here is very dark. This whole area is very dark to make him pop out from the buildings. There. Now, what happens when I'm inking the way I'm inking and I'm making the background black, basically, right? I don't have the luxury of doing this, right? His hand is darker and then the background is lighter. I don't have that. I can't do that, right? Because I'm thinking that this should all be black, like that. So if this is all black, then all you got is black on black. That's just not going to be helpful. So I usually don't like doing it, but after I had drawn everything, so the background I drew on a separate layer, right, because it will get confusing, is I went back in there with the erase tool and just erased this light area all around. I usually do not like doing this because I feel like I'm cheating. And I didn't solve the contrast contrast problems. But now I'm just getting all into it and outlining everything. But you can see that for me to bring this whole silhouette back out, oops, sorry. To bring this whole silhouette back out into focus, I drew, I erased the background around him. I think I even erased around Superman over here, see? It's down here, it's a little bit more subtle, harder to see, but it's all around. And it really did help. It really did help because you know, when I was inking this, I was lost many times, but I just had to push through. Like I just knew, okay, I just need to draw this, and then once I got something down, like as a whole, like all my drawings, then I can kind of see it better. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I found like I cannot just quit early on in the drawing or even halfway, because a lot of things happen. A lot of things happen when you're drawing, right? And then a lot of things come out when you're drawing. I think it's been rare that there's points where like, oh, this drawing is done. I think that only happened when I was younger because I would just be frustrated with myself more. I mean, I still am frustrated with myself. I just kind of know like it's gonna suck in the beginning. And then it's my job to be the garbage man and clean everything up, and get it to something that I would like. Um, that may have only happened once when I was older. I'll probably try to go through that drawing in one of these episodes. But it was under pressure, like a lot of pressure. I had a deadline to meet. I was like working late, and here I am trying to draw like this really crisp ink line, and that was just not going to happen. So that's not even because of a mental thing. It was like a physical thing. I was tired. It was late. And it just was not going to happen. But I did go back to that drawing and did it digitally. It was a lot more happier with the results of the line quality I was trying to do. Anyway, okay. Enough of that. A lot of ranting. So yes, so you can see, so there's a white outline around the anti-monitor. And then Superman here was a little harder for me to ink. I remember this too. Because I wanted all this light, right? This light source to be dramatic on him. So, you know, it really brought out his pecs and arms and like, you know, dun, 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 dun. Like he just hit the anti-monitor and this light source is, you know, really affecting him and it looks cool. But then he's behind this, like what I wanted to be like this dark area. I was kind of crazy. So I also did a cheat. I did not fill in this area, right? It became too heavy when it was just too dark. And then his silhouette was just so muddled. And a lot of this stuff that you have to do when you're inking is to kind of manage these values, right? Even though if it's high contrast, you're still really managing values. And with a George Perez drawing, there's like a ton of characters, but I do love that they're all these distinct silhouettes, super heroic silhouettes. Like, look at Martian Manhunter. It looks so cool. You know, the Ray is basically in the same pose, but they're like in these different angles. Makes it so interesting. You know, it's like this controlled chaos, and I still don't know how George Perez does it. Other people try to swipe his stuff, and they just can't do it. Like, when they do it, it looks muddled. When George Perez does it, I love it. It looks good. There's a organization that he does, right? Organization path. Okay, so anyway, so here's the inks. I inked until here, and then I was like, oh shoot, that's a bad image to be inking. And I remember I knew it was coming as I was inking. Like, you know, I was inking this 50. And, oh, by the way, so when I'm inking, I'm usually inking just thinking of black and white. I'm actually not thinking of color. It's just the way I ink. You can think of things with color. Like, there's a lot of people that do it all the time, and it's great, and stuff looks colorful. I just like to ink as if this is it. This is going to be black and white. So even when I inked this, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I don't think I was getting anything out of it. You know, like I couldn't see the focus. I couldn't see many things, right? And it's I think because like it's a clash of my process with George Perez's process, right? Like when he's drawing, he is drawing for color, Duh, right? Because he's drawing for comics. That's what he's doing. What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. So when I ink, I'm inking for black and white, and then I color it, right? So now I'm getting into these problems. Like, you look at this. This is kind of scary. Like, what is going on? I don't even know what I'm looking at, right? And like even halfway through this drawing, I didn't know what I was looking at. It was, but I knew like I'm following George Perez's lines, so I know I'm in good hands, right? It's one of these things. So I think, okay, so even this image is way off. Sorry. Okay, so I grabbed this image online. It was somebody's beat up old copy. It's cool. You could see like the staples and all that kind of stuff. The 50 is here. Oops, sorry. The 50 is here. Different price box, which is okay. But it is also what I remember, because this is like a more international copy, right? So this is what I remember, what I read in my cousin's place. Okay, so so here you could see the colorist is also thinking the same lines, right? This is done for color. Oh wow, look. So the antimater's face is very open, right? All the inking is still on the sides, kind of like the same idea or the same theory I'm trying to follow, right? So here's all the heavy inks are all out here. And leaves it all open for colorful characters, very colorful characters. And then the background is gray. It is like a speed line. So I use this to fill in the rest of my inking. Okay, now I'm going to start opening up the inks. Where did I put it? So this is like rooting through someone's dirty underwear. Trying to go through my layers, and I don't even remember any of it. Oh, interesting. I don't remember doing this. Okay, let's just open this up. There. Okay, so it looks like I actually scaled. I did not extend my drawing, but instead I scaled. See? So I scaled down the scene. I cheated. What a cheater. I scaled down the scene. I got rid of this 50 box, even though it is definitely something I remember the most. Sorry, let me clear this. I got rid of this box. See? And then everything shifted down. Like right here. Sorry, I'm cheating and I'm just showing you the colors because I don't have a work in progress here. It's just layers. So it is not exactly like the comic book. What a cheater. Okay, so let's clear that out. Okay, let's go through my coloring. So that's the final. And I believe I just started coloring. I filled in the background, so I don't even have that for you guys. Oh yes, so it was like this. Let me put this on top. It was like this when I was coloring it, right? Just fill in the things but I would block in solid color. So my way of thinking here is I usually have a base color. Okay, let's start with this. A base color, and then I have a darker color for shadow, and then if it needs it, I will put a highlight, right? So you can kind of see it happening on some of these. Like this thing has shadow on the smoke, and there's a lighter pink right here, light pink, dark purple, and then I let the inking be the shadow, in this case, at least, as I begin, right? So I'm just filling it in, to what I understand, right? Like there's no need to worry about color theory right now at this stage. Just block it. I mean, these are superheroes. Primary colors go onto their clothes. You know what they are. Someone has said it for you. I don't have to think so hard. Looks like I got into it and I started inking some of these highlights or coloring in some of these highlights, but that is usually the last pass. Either that or I merged these layers or I drew on the wrong layer. That is the last pass for me. Block in the colors first, and you can kind of get a better picture of what it should be. And with a drawing like this, it's kind of crazy. So yes, just blindly block in stuff. It'll be just a little bit easier to think of. Okay, so that's the anti-monitor. And then I think I colored in the heroes. So this has everything on it. I kind of don't like working in multiple layers because I'm lazy. I just color them all in on the same one. Here, let me get rid of the inks here. See, so the highlights are there, right? And then because I have a lot of heavy inks, I just let the heaviest ink here, I'm just guessing here, be the darkest. So that remains black. Okay, let's get rid of this and I'll show you guys. There, see? So for Superman, that's it. I'm not trying to model with colors. I'm not trying to do any of that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is farther along, right? Like, I think I would start detailing some of these characters and modeling some of the, like, you know, the six-pack and stuff like that for Superman. Because I just get into it. It's fun. It's fun. I mean, theory-wise, people always say just block it all in and then do your shadows next and do your highlight. I don't work like that. I just don't. It's just not as fun. And I can't see it. To be honest, I'm not good enough. I can't see it. I can't see what the drawing will be. Okay, so this is still kind of crazy, right? And I've started enjoying coloring in lines, or where I add shadows, which I guess is the same as me drawing something for color. It's just I think differently. I like switch. I ink for black and white only, and then when I go coloring, I switch to coloring. And then okay, so let's have this here. I'll show you guys. Okay, so I color in the background. So when I approach the buildings, so you see the buildings here. When I approach the buildings, I put down a flat color. It's all modified now because it's all done, but I put down a flat color so we can see it. So it probably looks like this. Yeah, oops. Probably time for me for stand-up. Gotta go to work. Maybe I should stop here and I will continue it for next time. Alright, it should be seamless, but I'm going to take a break right now. See you guys in a bit. Okay, I am back. 2 days have passed since those minutes where I took a little break and had to go to work. That's just life. Anyway, so let's continue on. It's kind of good that I got a little 2 days in between because now I was able to kind of recollect things a little bit better. So I think the first thing I actually started coloring was the background. And I think because everything was kind of here, I'll turn off some of this stuff so it's easier to see. So it was kind of close to that, but I think it was more like this. Oh, whoops, no, like like this. Okay, so it's hard to see now, but the way that I started doing this, maybe I can kind of demo it a little bit here, is, so this is what I had after I had inked all this stuff. I actually just picked a color, so let's just grab this one. There's a lot of fudging around finding this shade of color, by the way, throughout the whole coloring process. I never just leave something by itself, and the background is a giant part because all your colors start changing look against this color. Color is always, when drawing and coloring things, that's why they is like the general like artistic intelligence throughout all of history. It's just better when you lay down all your colors in blocks. It is still very hard for me to do this because I like detailing things right away. But I would do, okay, wait, I think this was still on multiply. In Procreate, it's nice because you can do alpha lock. And then I had the backgrounds, so the buildings were a separate layer from the characters. So this was, what I'm doing now is actually easier before I flattened everything. So I just would color the ink line, right? I would color this, so this would be the background. This has to be a little experiment here, or a little demo, so you guys can see how I colored this in, and maybe it'll be helpful for you guys as you color things in too. I mean, you know, this is just obviously the way that I do things, and you know, when I look on the internet and everybody drawing their stuff, everybody's a whole lot faster at doing this than I am. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. Anyway, I would color all this. This is on a separate layer, mind you, from the characters. And then I would, you know, sit here and kind of fudge around with it. Sometimes I can get there quick. So now, you know, you can just change the color of this. And Procreate's great. And I kind of am in this magenta pink color theory phase of my artwork. I guess I've been in it forever. I'm trying to break out of it, but I just like the way it looks right now, so I just keep going back to it. Anyway, so I would lay that out, right, the colors for the inking. I think this was first. This was one of the first things I did because it was just easier for me to visualize. Right, things are starting to stand out now. Like the characters are starting to stand out just because there's a color on there, and the darker value is with the darker ink lines. So that kind of will carry on. Can I clear this? Nope, not like that. I guess I have to do it this way. I think you can fill. There, yes. And then now it's all back to. You could do the same way if you wanted it to be one whole color. I think that may have been how I started coloring the ink background. But you know, if they're in one layer, it's not going to be helpful for you. Anyway, this is kind of cool. All in pink, kind of neat. So a lot of happy accidents happen when I'm just messing around with the hue saturation slider, and it is fun. It can be time consuming because you kind of get locked into this thing, and you just have to know when to push yourself forward and just go, okay. So say that one, right, the background. I was coloring in the background, and I landed into this darker pink, but it starts off very light. It's just once all the colors are down with the characters, you start having to adjust this. You, meaning me, was adjusting all this. And I opted for this redder background. So the original is like this very naturalistic-ish green. I mean, it's still a crazy bright green, right? Or a lighter color. This is the digital scan, and this is someone's actual comic book. So the print turned out darker, I guess, compared to what it was initially supposed to be like. And that kind of does things too. Like, you know, this is probably what I was looking at when I was a kid. Maybe this got a little bit more saturated in the digital picture. But, you know, all that stuff has been accommodated for by the colorist back in the day, so that when it prints into this glossy stock paper, produce a quality that they actually would like. Anyway, so I always remember the red skies from Crisis on Infinite Earths. That was just like the thing. It was the end of the world, so skies are red. Buildings. Oh, okay. What's this one? Oh, okay. So I have another layer for color of the buildings here. See the darker purple and red. So once I kind of decided, okay, I want the red skies like Crisis, it locked my choices down. Okay, so I'm kind of into this like using complementary colors all the time kind of color theory. I'm trying to find more subtle shades of coloring. I'm just not very good at it. I do appreciate it a lot when I watch TV shows or movies that do this kind of really nice, somewhat muted palette with like hints of different shades of blues that I would never get to, because my color palette is always like this bright, colorful, comic booky color theory. Anyway, so when I choose the red on the as the background, my brain is just like, well, it's got to be green because it's red and green. Those are the complements, right? You got red and green, blue and orange, purple and yellow. But I have been enjoying finding these, what do they call it? Tertiary colors to fill in the in-between. So tertiary colors would be the ones in between those colors that aren't as contrasty in complementary colors. That and the characters themselves are very primary colored, right? Like these are superheroes, so they're like this very bright blue, very bright red. So this pink kind of ends up being this color that is not as extreme in saturation than, say, elongated man's red, right? And all these, did I just draw? Yeah. All these reds you see are the same value, or yeah, this is the same color, not the shadow. This red on the Flash's suit, on Robin's costume, right? Superman's red is the same red. See here, like elongated man's body and Superman's red streak. They're the same red. Fortunately, George Perez really made like very distinct silhouettes, so they can kind of stand out and not really overlap each other. So now I can get away with this pink. This pink is a pretty different color. See, even here, it's a little close, but it's enough to distinguish the red of Superboy's cape from the pink of the background. So that kind of worked out, and I think that's why I was messing around with a darker pink here. Let's just leave that on. So once I have that down, then I start coloring in this. I remember with Anti-Monitor, it was this orange right here. That one was the first color to come down, and then, which is like my mid-tone, and then, once lighting has to be in there, I choose like a, let's see if I can actually show you this. So this yellow is there. Okay. So I think the orange, I'll just slide it down, and then I can get, I think, almost this value. Yeah, see? Pretty close. Easy. Nothing too complicated. Sometimes I will dip it down to like a redder hue, right? And I think maybe that's what this is. Oh, no, close. And a little darker. So it's not too crazy. Like, you don't have to, at least not the way I color, you don't have to bust your brain so hard trying to find your highlights and your midtones. You just kind of have, and darker tones, right? And, the ultimate dark tone that I have here is black, because I'm retaining this black that's in the characters. Oh, sorry. So let me show you. So the buildings let me find it. Oh, it's because this guy's on. Okay, so the buildings I chose this color for, this purple. So now instantly that gets knocked back simply because the outline on the characters are this black, right? And now my inking craziness is starting to make a little more sense, right? Now it's even easier to see the focus of the drawing. Yeah, so I think I will color in. So this used to be black in terms of the inking stuff, and it's really weird. Kind like I see colors color over into the black line that certain artists will do, and sometimes I'm just such a stickler for the black line that the artist did that it's I won't like it. I won't like it, even though you see here, this is exactly what I did. So the original inks were supposed to be like this, right? But I actually ate into my own inking to add this extra layer of color. Oops, yeah, into here, right? Into here. So I kind of extended it, like it's my own drawing, so I get to choose to break my own rules. And the energy here for these, anything that's like energy, my rule is definitely, generally in this drawing, to color in the line. It just looks cooler. That's what generally helps me figure out what rule I have in my head to break. Yeah, so see, all the stuff that's in the characters, like, Harbinger's hair could probably have that treatment, but it was just the rule that I kept in my head. Like, characters have the black outline, any effects things, I will color in the line. And it was fun. This was super fun to color. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a crazy coloring book. The shine effects on Anti-Monitor's hand. Usually, like I told you, I will have highlight, medium, and a darker color. In this case, his hand, the Anti-Monitor's hand, I just added a highlight. And I kind of let, at least in this main finger here, or in the main body of this hand, right, all these fingers kind of have the same idea. They do not have a mid-tone, for the most part. It kind of creeps back in here or under here. Like, I kind of want to add this like shadow to pop Kid Flash out. And you can see it here too on his knuckles. Kind of to make that part of his hand recede. Yeah. I do like looking at George Perez layouts for this. It was just a lot of fun. I added a lot of this. Did I just do that? I think I did. Oh, it's part of his armor. Okay, sorry, I'm just mumbling to myself. I was just looking at this part here. I was kind of confused. What is this? Did I just make a mistake? But it's part of Anti-Monitor's armor right here. It's like this. Oh, well, it's like this, right? Anyway, so I added a bunch of shadowing to this area right here. Oops. Moving too fast. To this area right here. To kind of darken it up and make these blasts that are happening on his chest a lot brighter. And even though his mouth should be a light source, and I kind of treat it as one, I still add the shadow here. It helps bring out this energy, and it helps bring out the this what would you call this? Superman's bounce lines, motion lines, because it's like primarily light and white. And same idea here. This is all darkened up, all right? Except for elongated man. But this is all darkened up. It helps this streak really stand out. So there's a lot of cheats that I do, and I think in general everybody does, to make things pop out more. Well, the light source isn't realistic. You can kind of fake it, and that's part of the fun of illustration, I think. Okay, so the back of Anti-Monitor's, oh, it's off sync now. There, you can kind of see it better here. The back of Anti-Monitor's little shoulder garb here, I treated it with this like kind of metallic look, but it's also darkened up, right? So the shadow creeps in a lot more. His face is a lot darker, and it's working out because this background is now not as contrasty, but now his face is, and now there's more focus to that. To that contrast. See, I'm telling you to see. How about I point it out to you first? Here, wait, where is the? Oh, that's why. This area right here. Right, it's treated lighter in the original drawing, but I darkened it up. It's just my preference, to be honest. I don't think it would have been Mr. Perez's preference, because I like going in with heavy blacks into my inking. Nowadays, I'm just into that. And here too, see, this is all very dark the way that I inked it. So now there's more emphasis on this light source. There's a lot of contrast going on here. Let's get rid of it. Yeah, see? It helps a lot on my drawing too, because it brings out Hawkman right here, his hand. And Power Girl, I get in trouble around here. Because now this, like I explained earlier, right, there's all this dark value coming in, and it could make the inking muddled. See here, this treated in the original drawing, there's a light value here and a dark value on his wings, so there's contrast there. There's a lot of contrast going on, a lot more than mine, and it just becomes a choice. And then I think after this was a lot of fun. While I was doing the colors for this, I had to also work in the logo. So this is a whole other problem in itself, right? The idea is, okay, if I was trying to do this for the newsstands, this had better stand out, pun intended, I guess. Right? So, like I said, my color theory was basically red and green. It doesn't show up a lot in the main drawing here. Right? The pariah here is green. Aquaman's hands are green. Martian Manhunter stands out because he's green compared to, this was unfortunate, to Black Orchid. Because she's also purple. But even then, I have to pick like a purple that's kind of close to this purple. It's like a lighter hue, but also still saturated. So it's like a giant balancing act I kind of have to do. Cole's pink energy is, I cheated it because it has a light, very light white, almost white pink, light pink around it to make it stand out from this pink on the background. So there's a lot of tricks that I kind of have to pull off because a lot of these costume characters might be similar in hue. Yellow stood out the best because it's purple and yellow. So there's your other compliment right there that's working in this drawing. Anyway, so I want the logo to stand out because that's what they used to do back in the day. You want to attract people's attention on these covers. So the brightest, the craziest contrast is on Crisis and on Infinite Earths, and I think the original colors. Yeah, there we go. Oh, here, let me turn off the logo. It's actually red and yellow, right? And stands out nicely on that green background, the red 50, which is awesome logo design, by the way, of the DC symbol, right? And I kind of had to make a similar distinction. The 50 kind of comes down, moves back a little bit because it's also red, but I think that was okay with me. I didn't need it to pop out in the same way. I did want Crisis to pop out. That's the one I really wanted to bring out. And then, these boxes with the names of Marv Wolfman, George Perez, and Jerry Ordway are in this safe white box. So, there's nothing that's going to get messed up, even though that name is red. And, I love I just traced over the numbers. I'm not even trying to make it look perfect or clean. I think I've gotten more comfortable with what I'm drawing, that I'm okay when my lines aren't like super straight. I used to use a ruler to do all these speed lines and stuff like that, like image style. But nowadays I kind of like it. It's part of it. That's just the way I draw now. I'm not trying to impress anybody. Okay, so let's turn on everything else. I think I can go through that. What's this? Oh, highlights. Yes, highlights. These are fun. Sometimes I catch myself putting them in before I even lay anything down, and it gets me in trouble. Anyway, so I have a highlights layer here. I'm turning it off and on right now, so you could see. And it's generally pink. Okay, what I did was I built in the other highlight, which would be the ones that would be off of the characters here, or anti-monitor. Like, I think I chose to use yellow as the other highlight. So you can see here on Black Orchid. Okay, so I did this because I needed her. This is her. Oh, this is the thigh that's in front of her body, right? But this color, her costume color, and this color are too similar. So I purposely add this one, this yellow highlight right here, to make this guy stand out. Right. I think I might do that another thing. So Martian Manhunter here, I don't even have a medium range value color as his shadow, right? It's just a flat color, but I put that yellow in here as well. So this arm looks like it's in front of this one. I think that's just stuff that people learn how to do, but for me, I think I specifically remember I had to do it when I was working on Game Boy games, because limited palettes again, and I had to make a distinction between the front leg and the back leg. At least that's how I learned it. I'm pretty sure this is some kind of color theory somewhere else. Flash's leg is that way. There's more highlight to that. There's a yellow light here on Hawkman's thing coming from this blast. And even that you can fake, right? Like Harbinger has a pink one coming from this one. Like, why doesn't she have the yellow one from there? I don't know. That's just what I picked. Captain Atom, same way. Like, you would think it would be this chest pink, right? But it just made sense for me that the closer light would be this one. So I chose that one. I think you could get away with pink on that too. It's just the whole point of me adding these highlights is to distinguish it from the color behind it. Or next to it, sorry. Like, behind it because it's in front of Captain Atom. But it's this pink, basically. I don't want this pink showing up here. so that Captain Atom stands out more. For now. Okay, so why did I say for now? You'll see. Because, so that I built all that in, right? You see it on Firestorms there. But then I go in with another layer, which is the highlight layer, which is this guy. And it is super fun to put in, just because now it's all, yeah, I'm totally into this, like, like rim lighting action. It's just fun. So, you know, I can bring out things a lot more, and I'm going to keep switching this on and off so you can kind of see what's going on in certain places. I can kind of outline things. It's not, yeah, it is a rim light, but it's not really like a realistic rim light, you know? Like it's like a line. It's kind of not really lighting, but it helps distinguish these characters. Again, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure these characters stand out, that I don't muddle them up. And that's part of the process as I'm coloring all this. Yeah. So I think that was the last. The highlights are usually my last step. Like anywhere that I see that the silhouettes are getting maybe too muddled, I'll go back in there and add it. I mean, sometimes it might weaken the outline, like so see the anti-monitor's shoulder here. But I think it's worth it. It's worth to put it in there. It looks kind of cool. I will leave like a pretty big gap on between, this is a pretty still chunky black line here, and then the highlight comes in there. So I don't lose it, right? So I don't lose that holding line. At least not as much. Okay. It's around his mouth, on Anti-Monitor's mouth there. Okay, so that, okay, then now after that, I had to clean up all this stuff on the side. Oops. And I made just like a plain gray black background. Nothing that competes with anything that's in the cover we don't really want. Okay, so when I've been drawing these homages to covers, I think I might have more of these that I'll do videos on. I'm kind of celebrating that they are these comic books, these old comic books that I had with the messed up sides and the corners all folded, and there's creases and there's staples. I kind of like drawing the actual comic book. So for this one, I kind of made it up, and I put like these pages, like these uneven frayed pages. You can kind of see it here on the side. Let me just get another layer here to draw on. See here on the side, right? It's kind of uneven as the paper degrades. I think I add a wrinkle layer. There we go. These are okay. These wrinkles. I have better ones. But I thought they just had to be there. And see, I drew the staple. Here's the staple on the side, and here's some of your wrinkles right here. And scratches. I like these dings in comic book covers. I know nobody does, because you're supposed to. That's how you grade these comic books. It's just nowadays that I'm this old, I like seeing them because like this is how well loved this book was. Like especially if it's my books, they're all torn up and messed up, and there's masking tape on it. It says "Property of Arvin Bautista." It just reminds me of how much fun I had with these books before. I was so careful with the covers and stuff like that. And then I did this thing where it's like a lighter color. I think it was like a, what's that called? It's a brush setting. It's a layer setting. It's a layer setting. And it was like either a burn or a multiply or one of those. when I put these guys in there. I thought that was a lot of fun too. I will have a better example of this in the future. And then I signed it on that layer too, with my sincerest apologies, because to all these guys, to Marv Wolfman, George Perez, Jerry Ordway, because they're the best, and I'm just swiping their work. They did all the hard work to get these books. I think Dick Giordano was another of the inkers, and I think there may have been someone else. But it's all their hard work that made me love comics and DC and superheroes and giant crossovers for the rest of my life. So may have been just a fun job for them to do, but it definitely had a lot of impact in little Arvin's life and big Arvin's life. Anyway, that's it for today. That was pretty long, but I felt I just wanted to go through it because George Perez is the man. I spent a lot of time trying to redraw his cover and realizing just how much more crazy he was with his artwork and how much he must have loved drawing things. Anyway, that's it for today. I will see you guys in the next episode of Comics Rant.